had a great series of bilateral engagements with a couple of our key partners talking about their contributions to our force posture review. Had a great lunch with the Secretary General where we're just very aligned. And then the meeting with the North Atlantic Council where I'm really struck by some of the consistency of the key themes, a deep agreement on the need to move towards NATO 3.0, a European-led conventional defense of the continent. And also an importance in understanding our posture review, where we're coming from, advancing and accelerating the shift towards a NATO 3.0 that's going to put the alliance on a more balanced and durable and sustainable basis that's going to be in the interests, of course, of Americans because it's going to be more fair, but also in the interests of Europeans, who I think you really see breakthrough just thanks to President Trump's leadership and leadership of people like Secretary General Rutte here in the continent, as well as many national leaders in the historic Hague commitments, but really bringing NATO to a more realistic, fit for purpose, fit for time, more balanced structure. So that's the spirit we're going to continue pursuing our Europe posture review in. And we're hearing from allies. We're hearing on the questionnaire. The questionnaire is designed to give allies a clear sense to put in writing formally their responses, what they want us to know. We're not hiding the ball at all. And we just received several of the questionnaires, so we're looking forward to reviewing them. And I'll go back and report to Secretary Hegseth on the progress we've made here, the momentum we have, thanks to President Trump, thanks to Secretary General Rutte and some of the key leaders in Europe. So with that, I'll turn it over to questions.
Reuters, please.
Yes, thank you, Lily Beyer from Reuters. First off, is the U.S. concerned about a possible Russian attack on NATO? And what did the CIA chief convey to the Russians in Moscow? And then second of all, Reuters reported this morning that Secretary Hegseth will be presented with at least 4 options by November 6th. Could you explain what those options might look like, and could the review be concluded before December?
Sure. So I'll defer your questions on Director Ratcliffe's trip to the CIA. We won't go into any of the specifics of threat scenarios, but I think we all have a clear and realistic sense of the challenges posed to European security, including in the context of potential simultaneity that we're looking at together. I think we have. I spent Tuesday at EUCOM and Wednesday at SHAPE. I think we have a very aligned perspective on the security challenges that we face, and we have a very good plan. Reasonable plan for European-led conventional defense through things like the NATO NDPP process, through the NATO force model that's going to put Europe in a lasting position where it's going to be able to lead its own defense. The United States is not leaving the continent. It's not leaving the alliance. It's saying how we're going to make this fit for purpose. We're going to go back to the origins of what NATO is supposed to be, where Europe is going to take the lead. In terms of the specific options, I won't get into detail, but I will say that we are looking at it from the logic of strategic rigor in line with the national security strategy from President Trump at the White House, and then at Secretary Hegseth level, obviously also with the President's approval, the national defense strategy, our priority missions on the Western Hemisphere and the First Island chain, but also the important alliance that we have here, as well as the ability to project power. So we're looking at this on a kind of reasonable sort of cost-benefit basis, saying, look, we've got huge momentum on the continent, enormous defense spending increases. I single out Germany in particular, but we also see Poland. We see a number of the Scandinavian countries. We hope to see more from countries like the United Kingdom. But basically, major efforts to step up to lead in Europe's own defense. And so we're going to look at that. We're also going to look at the ability to project power here, make sure that the access, spacing, and overflight restrictions are fit for purpose, that they make sense. And that obviously we're doing things that are, for instance, in the Middle East that also benefit Europe, so make sure that that's all rationalized.
AFP?
Yes. C'est Ricobi, I'm Olivier Beau from AFP, Agence France-Presse. We understand that the topic of the bases, the use of the bases, NATO bases in Europe has also been put on the table by the United States. Do you think it's realistic to expect European allies to accept any request from the US to use these bases, even when they might not be completely in accordance with the purpose you want to?
Well, look, I mean, I think you need to step back and look at the fact that, especially if you look at the model of NATO 2.0, the United States was bearing a significantly disproportionate share of the defense of the European continent, as well as activities, military operations in Europe's near, abroad, and approximate regions. that didn't reflect a kind of reasonable balance between the economic and population size between Europe and the United States. And frankly, I'll say that the France has made this point for well over a generation. And in fact, I would say in a lot of ways we're pretty close to the French position of saying actually Europe can and should take more responsibility. Now, obviously, we're saying we should do that in a collaborative way. We should do that in ways that don't prejudice against or prohibit U.S. companies from prohibiting in the European market. But we're also saying we understand that European companies and European governments are going to invest in Europe. We want that. We want Europeans to invest more in their own economy because that's going to lead to a sustainable, more balanced relationship within NATO, which I think is similar to what France has called for. I think what we're looking for in terms of basis is we're looking at a common sense realism, right? The United States has capabilities and is conducting operations around the world that are in the benefit. I mean, as SecGen said earlier today, I mean, Europe has an interest in making sure that also that Iran doesn't get a nuclear weapon, which is, of course, our objective. So that's something that's in the interests of Europeans as well. So let's make sure we're not looking in every context for a complete carte blanche, but we're saying we need to be able to have the ability to operate effectively. We need predictability, which Europeans often call for. And that wasn't always in evidence during Operation Epic Fury, and that led to the president's justified frustration. So let's have a clear sense. Let's understand, who sits where, what we can expect, and then let's have more of a rebalance. And if you get to a Europe that has more capability, Europe will be able to contribute more, and that's what we're looking for. Obviously, what the president's looking for, and Secretary Hegseth is rightly looking for in terms of capabilities to ensure that the Strait of Hormuz has the ability for commercial traffic to come in and out without molestation by the Islamic Republic of Iran. Those are the kind of reasonable expectations that we're looking at. And we're going to be and we're not coming in here and saying and dictating. We're saying, hey, what is in your questionnaire? What are you prepared to offer? And we're going to look at the different alternatives and make sure that that's fit for purpose.
Last question, DPA.
Ansgar Hase, German press agency, DPA. What should Germany expect when it comes to the force posture review? And on the incidents, the drone incident in Leipzig, do you have any intelligence that you can share with us? Was Russia behind it? Thank you.
Yeah, I'll defer to the German government on the latter issue, but I would just say, look, what Germany is doing over the last 18 months, thanks to President Trump, thanks to Chancellor Merz, thanks to the Secretary General, thanks to the German people, Minister Pistorius, it's an extraordinary tectonic shift. I mean, it's a historic shift that looking out half a century from now, people will look back and say Germany is going from essentially functionally demilitarized in the NATO 2.0 era to very rapidly rearming in the context of collective defense. Germany is one of the largest economies in the world. That's one of the reasons why we can reasonably expect a NATO 3.0, a Europe-led, conventional defense of the continent to be viable, because Germany alone is a huge economy, and we see a Germany that's very collaborative. I just met with the Deputy Defense Minister. We have a very practical, very results-oriented discussion about how do we look at co-production, how do we collaborate, how do they understand what we're doing? General Brauer came and briefed us at the Pentagon on Germany's new military strategy and its defense plans. That's exactly what we want to see from our allies. It's what we're looking for from Japan. It's what we're looking for from Canada. So Germany is really doing the kind of modeling what we're expecting, and not because we asked it. I think President Trump deserves tremendous credit, no question. But it's also something that the Germans themselves are seeing as in their interest and seeing as something that's reasonable. How is it reasonable for the American people to be spending 3.54% of GDP on defense and being able to project power for all our benefit, and the German people to be spending 1%? At some point, that just doesn't make sense anymore. We're beyond that. That's one of the key things. We're beyond that kind of theological finger-pointing conversation. We're now in a conversation about how do we produce stuff fast enough? How do we manage risk across time? How do we balance responsibilities? How do we develop our forces together? That's the kind of conversation we want to have in NATO 3.0, and that's the kind of conversation we're having here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.